Good morning.
Good morning. Okay? All right, great. I'd like to welcome Octavio Paguaga from Washington, D.C. area. It might be his first time down in this area. So, Octavio got his MIS from George Mason University, Washington area. Worked for Unisys, worked for Sun Rocket, and currently is an independent consultant. You know why he's here? Okay.
Thank you. Welcome to Powershell. My name is Octavio. I can be found on Twitter at Oaktree __. So I'll let you lines you already heard. I guess the last one is a woodworker. I started doing that over the last year. Bought a fixer-upper in DC that was full of cockroaches, and working with, little by little, it's gotten better. You guys live in an awesome area, really pretty. I went to the wrong Stetson College this morning, so I went to St. Pete's College. Called somebody. I'm like, hey, it's really empty over here. Am I at the right place? And they're like, no, it's back, back in Tampa. So I spent only an hour 15 driving today. So before I go ahead and start, just curious about PowerShell knowledge. Novices. Intermediates? Oh, okay. All right, and experts. Cool. So what I hope you guys take away with is that hopefully you walk out here a little bit encouraged. I've been doing PowerShell on and off for the last 3 years. I started off learning by going to a Ben 10 talk at DerbyCon. So that's kind of what got me going into it. I want you to realize that PowerShell is useful no matter what you do. I got a buddy who just started working at a big AD environment. And one of his techs said, hey, I have to learn this PowerShell stuff. And yeah, he does. And last but not least, hopefully to encourage you to upgrade your environment. If you're still running PowerShell 2, attackers are having probably a field day in your environment if they get in there. Strides have been made to go ahead and improve that, but you obviously have to upgrade your environment to get there. So if you're brand new to like the two people that are brand new in PowerShell, some good talks right here. First, I forget which one's which, but one talk is that Ben 10 talk I referenced earlier. Ben 10's a great speaker, very knowledgeable, and he breaks things down very simply. Another talk is from a Microsoft event from 2011. That's the intro to PowerShell version 2. Then from there you have two books. So Don Jones' book is PowerShell, The Monk of Lunches. It's pretty much short chapters. You read for about 15-20 minutes, then you're given a lab to do. It's a great way to learn. If you're brand new, I recommend the Absolute Beginner's Guide to PowerShell. So how is this talk going to work? This talk is going to work by doing the following. We're going to go ahead and actually do a quick demo. We're going to actually do a quick pen test quick pen test in a lab setup I brought down with me. We're going to use PowerView and Mimikatz, two really common tools that have been out, so they're pretty mature now. Then we're going to find out or talk about ways to detect PowerShell activity, or basically logging. And then from there, we're going to talk about ways to constrain PowerShell. And then last but not least, people I follow on Twitter, very knowledgeable folks. So what's the high level? What is PowerShell? PowerShell is an object-oriented programming language for Windows that's been around for 11 years now, probably 11 and a half years. We're up to version 5. If you do any kind of work with Windows, you're probably starting to see that in your more day-to-day life. PowerShell has plugins for AD, Exchange, SQL, Azure, and Office 365, amongst other ones. The main thing you use in PowerShell are called commandlets. Commandlets are pretty much .NET codes that go ahead and perform some kind of function for you. All the commandlets follow a verb-noun syntax. So some examples are right here for us. We have get-help. So get help will do exactly that. You would do get help space get command, for example, and it will go ahead and give you a parameter that you can go ahead and use for that commandlet. If you were to go ahead and add get help commandlet, say dash detailed or slate dash examples, it'll give you more information about that commandlet. So it's very useful. Get command also very useful. Get command, let's do, for example, get dash command space star list. Give me all the commandlets with a list in the name. And then last but not least, invoke command. That's more for an example. What is invoke command going to do? It's going to run a command of some sort, right? So invoke command is used for talking to remote machines. The two tools we're going to use that we're going to go ahead and import are called PowerView and Invoke Mimikatz. PowerView was written by Will Schroeder, who's down on Armjoy. One of the guys, if you do offensive stuff, you really should be following. PowerView goes ahead and does three things very well. It goes ahead and gives you AD integration, AD commandlets, no matter what version of Powershell you're on. So I don't have to worry about stumbling across a machine that has the AD modules from Microsoft already there. I import it, I have that functionality. Next thing it does is help me find file servers, help me find file shares, and then goes ahead and helps me look through those files. And then what we're going to go ahead and use it for is for user hunting. So we're going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to find out where on the domain this user is logged into. And it's going to go ahead and start querying every machine on the domain or a certain subset if you do a different command. And it's going to start saying, hey, is this which users are currently on your machine, and work its way around your network. Mimikatz, Invoke Mimikatz is pretty much a PowerShell version of Mimikatz. Basically, it actually goes ahead and grabs the mimikatz.exe, loads it into memory, and then goes ahead and calls the functionality of that program from memory. You can get around a lot of AD vendors that way. The ones that I have heard do catch you are basically based on signatures on the text file. So they go ahead and look for the text called Invoke Mimikatz. So if you want to go ahead and get around that, you change it to KitKats or something else. So the demonstration, I couldn't get video to install, but basically my demonstration is going to pertain, my lab network consists of one 2012 server running AD, 4 Windows 7 machines of different PowerShell versions. I will make these slides available, so don't worry about catching as I type. So that's kind of what we're going over right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start PowerShell.exe space -exec bypass. And what that -exec does is it goes ahead and bypasses the execution policy. Microsoft will go ahead and say the execution policy is not any kind of security control. Basically what it's there for is to prevent you from accidentally running something that you probably shouldn't. So it's kind of like a safety net. But once again, to bypass it, all you do is start it with that flag. Then we're going to go ahead and import PowerView, and then we're going to use this first commandlet from there called get net groups. So we're going to go ahead and enumerate my domain controller for any admins, any groups that contain the word admin in it, pardon me. Then we're going to go ahead and get the group members of the domain admins group. We're going to go ahead and now use Invoke User Hunter. Invoke User Hunter is that one that's going to start querying every machine in my environment, which is 5 machines, so it's not a big deal. And it's going to look for that user called oaktree_DADM. Once it finds it, we're going to use PS remoting to access that system. And I'll get into PS remoting shortly. Once we're on that system, invoke Mimikatz. We're going to import Mimikatz part of me, and we're going to run the command, and you're going to get my password. So just one thing I briefly glossed over was remoting. There are 2 ways to use PowerShell in a remote environment. So one is by using WMI commands. If you happen to use HP OpenView or some kind of monitoring software, or let's say Nessus from Tenable, you're using WMI to make remote queries into other machines. So you can go ahead and say, hey, give me a list of processes on that machine, or give me a list of users on that machine currently. But what you can also do is you can run commands using WMI. So I can log in with my credentials, access your system, and say, hey, kick off this exe. The other way to do it, and if you're in an admin role, probably a more efficient way to go about it, is to use PS remoting. PS remoting uses WinRM. It runs on port 5985, 5986, depending on encryption. And basically it allows you to log into that machine similar like SSH, and now I have a shell on that system. So a very valuable resource for admins would be, let's say I have to make a change on 20 servers. I can log into 20 machines via RDP, or I can enable WinRM and log into them that way and run my code. So WinRM is a very useful tool. So let's hope everything works. So I'm currently on Oak Tree Lab 1, a regular workstation. let's go ahead and pretend for sake of discussion, it was running Tomcat, pop Tomcat, I was able to get a regular user's password. So I have a regular user on the domain, and that's really important because PowerView is not of any value until you have a domain account. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to do that PowerShell.exe, exec bypass. I'm going to confirm I'm in the right directory, which I am, and I'm now going to import. Oh, shoot. Thank you. Let's see if I cancel that. Okay. Thank you. So PowerShell exec bypass, get child item, and I'm now going to import PowerView. So import module PowerView. So I'm now going to go ahead and list all the domains, admin groups in my network. So get net groups, and you can tab complete, which is kind of a pain sometimes. But group name will be star. Sorry. So those are my groups in my machine, in my network currently with the name admin somewhere in there. So I'm going to now query the domain admin group. So for the users of it, or the members of it. So member, group name, domain, admins. So we get some output. To make it a little bit easier for us to see, I'm just going to select the pertinent field. So we see one user right now. So there's one user of the main admin group. So now we're going to use invoke user hunter. So we're now going to do invoke user hunter. It's going to happen a lot, unfortunately. Username, Oaktree-_DADM. And it's now querying my machine. It's now querying every machine in my network. There is a quieter version of this called Stealth User Hunter. So invoke Stealth User Hunter, which will go ahead and do a limited subset of your environment to do it. And basically what it's doing is it runs get-computer. So it gets a list of every computer in my environment and then queries those machines. So I can see that my Oaktree_DADM account is currently logged into 192.168.1.173. So I'm going to create a PS remoting session to access that system. So new PS session, computer name, Oaktree Lab 3. And now that works, I'm going to enter it. So enter PS session, ID of 1. So I'm currently on Oaktree Lab 3. I will clear my screen, confirm that the directory is there. So now I'm doing an alias, so GCI. So first I did get-child item, and now I'm doing an alias called GCI. If you really wanted to, you could also do LS. So there are different ways to, there are aliases there that will make kind of your assimilation into the language a little bit easier. So now I'm going to import that script. See if we get popped by execution policy. We did not. So now invoke Mimikatz has been loaded. Now it's just a matter of running it. And there you go. So you guys now have my password. That's my domain admin password for my network. So it says that. There's ways we could have made it. There's ways we could have made this a little bit stealthier, I guess. We obviously could. We wrote it to the file. We wrote it to a system. I could have had it just imported it from a web server and ran it that way. But that's it. As simple as that. So we go ahead and go back to the slides. If I can find them. And now the question I ask for you guys would be, or the question I ask myself will be, what logs are recorded? So you guys now know my password for my DADM account. You've seen it, you have it in your possession. What do I, from an incident response point of view, have to track you down? And the question, whoever said it got It's the right answer. So basically, it depends on what version of PowerShell you have. So the chart you see behind me is what comes with by default on Windows. So if I have Windows 7, I have PowerShell 2. If I have Windows 5, I have Windows 10, I have PowerShell 5. These are all by default. So if I there's nothing stopping me from upgrading my system from my Windows 7 machine to go to PowerShell 5. And once again, you should do it. So what I have on Oak Tree Lab number 3 is the following. You guys have my password. I know that you started PowerShell. I know that you stopped PowerShell. That's it. And that's where the issue is that if you're still using that PowerShell 2, you have no idea what's going on. And there's a lot of tools out there to do offensive mindset tools. So you have to go ahead and start upgrading your systems or at least monitoring your usage. Otherwise, you're playing at a disadvantage. So Microsoft is making things better. If you go ahead and just follow this link or Google PowerShell Loves the Blue Team, basically they talk about different things you have in PowerShell 5, your newest build, that they've done to make things better, or what features they've added to make things better. So one of the things we have from PowerShell 3 is called deep module logging. So if you look right here, this is going to look horrible for you guys, I can tell now. But basically what we have is we at least know the script name. So we know with PowerShell 3 that a script called invoke-mimikatz.ps1 was ran. Obviously that's really easy to get around, right? I go ahead and rename it, and that would be of less use to you. But at least you have some information now, more than we did with 2. You also have that any time, and what deep module logging does, is any time a commandlet gets called, it's going to go ahead and log its usage. So in text down here, what we see the commandlet add-member was ran, and then the parameters of member type, name, value, and input object were added to that. So we don't know exactly what was ran, because not everything requires a commandlet being called, but we at least know when a commandlet was called, what was done with it. So we have more information, right? We're starting off better. Or better off, pardon me. You can go ahead and capture these IDs by looking for event ID 4103 in your event logs. The better alternative is to use script block logging. Script block logging will go ahead and capture everything between that curly brace. So the third one down if you can't see the box. My poor choice in coloring. So that curly brace, everything between that open curly brace and that closed curly brace is called a script block. You'll use script blocks for if statements, while loops, functions, where objects. You'll use those a lot. So script block logging will go ahead and capture that data between those 2 curly braces. So invoke-mimikatz is a function. Functions use curly braces to go ahead and open up to create them, I guess. So we now have the actual code. So if you guys can see this, it has the actual header for the script. It has the actual help files. So it says synopsis, this script leverages Mimikatz 2.0, and it keeps on going. This is a lot more use to your IR folks than deep module logging. Event ID of 4104. If you go ahead and enable this, just be cognizant that you're going to have a lot more logs. Your log usage will obviously go up, but that should be a good thing. I mean, you're probably not using PowerShell in most environments on a lot of machines. So if you see a sudden flood of usage, either give someone a promotion or take the machine offline. The last option will be transcription. So transcription is very similar. Transcription is like script in Linux or spool in Metasploit. And basically what that does is any output that you saw, every command I typed into my previous window, and every output that we saw would be saved to event logs. So it's basically a transcript of what I've done. Same thing, it goes ahead and writes it down into the event logs. That's the PowerShell 5 feature. If you're running PowerShell 2, a poor man way to do it is to go ahead and utilize one of your profile files that PowerShell has and do it there. So you go ahead into your profile and you say start transcription, give it a file name, and now the moment I start PowerShell, everything I type goes into that text file. That's easy to get around once again. If you've happened to have seen the flag for PowerShell of -NOP, which is short. It's dash not. That's short for dash no profile. So I go ahead and start PowerShell.exe with dash not. What you did earlier doesn't get logged, right? But people get lazy, or you get lucky, however you want to view it. So how can we have made it harder, right? We talked about logging. So how could I have possibly at least slow the attacker down somewhat? PowerShell 5 has a couple features, and I like this quote. Matt Graver, one of the real good PowerShell guys, went ahead and put it out recently. And basically he said nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Everything I'm going to show you already has workarounds in it. So there's no silver bullet, right? Everything you can get around. But just think of it this way. You get around it once you're on these machines. If you're just throwing exploits trying to get onto these systems, you have no idea that constrained language mode is enabled or something else is enabled. So you're at least making it harder for me as an attacker to get onto your system. So that's providing some value right there. So the first thing I want to go ahead and explain is for these examples, I'm going to go ahead and use that command right there. And what that command does is it's going to call the .NET library of math. So I'm referring to .NET directly. I'm not using any commandlet. And I'm going to call the square root function in that .NET library. And I'm going to find the square root of 64. For the sake of time, we'll go ahead and just show you the screenshot. It's going to fail. So, oh, you guys can't see that. All right. Sorry.
Turn off the lights.
Yeah. Kill the lights in my house.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. So it's going to fail. It says invoke method invocation is supported only on core types in this language mode, and a couple more lines. And basically what I have enabled on this system is called constrained language mode. Constrained language mode, what it does is it goes ahead and removes support for .NET, Windows API calls, and COM access. So things that most users, maybe except for COM access, what a COM access is, pardon me, is your interaction with an application. So I can go ahead and use COM access to interact with IE or interact with Word and actually modify, go ahead and start it and make changes to the properties in that application. So that's what COM access is. Constrained language mode goes ahead and disables that for anyone except for admins. To enable it, it's really easy to go ahead and do. All you have to do is create an environmental variable called __PS lockdown policy, and you've enabled constrained language mode. Unfortunately, to disable it is just as easy. I go ahead and remove that variable, start PowerShell once again, and I now have full access to that PowerShell instance. So a better way to go about it is to use AppLocker. What AppLocker is a replacement for software restriction policies, and basically what it allows you to do is create policies on executables, on Windows installer rules, on scripts, so PS1 files, .bat files, .bb files, and also package app rules. So when I go ahead and enable AppLocker, I'm enabling constrained language mode with it. So one thing that burdened me for a while was that not every version of Windows 7 supports AppLocker. So you go ahead and you Google it, it says it supports Windows 7. The thing is it supports Windows 7 Enterprise, Windows 7 Ultimate, not Windows 7 Pro. So keep an eye on your event logs. There is event logs for AppLocker. It will tell you there when you have an issue. So when I go ahead and set it up, and this comes from the first line, first bullet comes from the blog post I mentioned earlier. We're going to create an AppLocker rule for the first script, pardon me, that says only allow scripts to be ran from the following path of C trusted. So PS1 and then star PS1. So I can run any PS1 file from that path, pardon me. In that path, I have a file called map.ps1, which once again contains that square root function I showed you earlier. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. So you already saw the first thing. So C trusted map.ps1, cross my fingers, 64. Oops. Ooh, it didn't work. All right. No time to troubleshoot. Wonder what I did wrong. Oh, okay. I didn't copy and paste correctly. But I was able to run the script at least there. All right, so I got around AppLocker. Or, sorry, AppLocker worked the way it should. So things to be cognizant of when you go ahead and run AppLocker is that you're now relying on your folder to pretty much be your safety barrier. So if I have port permissions on that C trusted folder, AppLocker is of no value to me, right? I'm just going to go ahead and copy Mimikatz into that folder and run it from there. So be cognizant of that. If the attacker has admin, AppLocker is defeated. I mean, I can go ahead and create whatever rule I want. If you don't have any kind of Windows event forwarding enabled, I'll just go ahead and turn off AppLocker and go from there. AppLocker evaluates rules on a deny first. So if let's say I have 10 rules, I have 5 deny rules, I have 5 accept rules, and they're interspersed. Deny, accept, deny, accept. It's going to read every deny rule first. So it'll go deny the first 5 deny rules first, and then the 5 accept rules after that. So things we had to do to go ahead and enable AppLocker. We go ahead and create our scripts. We set our AppLocker policy to enforce, and then we go ahead and start the application ID service. Once you do those 3 things, you now have that service running. So one thing I couldn't do, because I would screw my demo up, the earlier demo up, is that AppLocker does block executables, right? So what if I wanted to go ahead and just whitelist, or just go ahead and block Powershell.exe? And the thing with that is you're wasting your time again. So Powershell.exe is just an executable that calls up DLLs to start up Powershell. So I don't need Powershell.exe to go ahead and start that language. So if you were to come across an environment in which you weren't able to run, you weren't able to run that script, run that executable, pull down Ben 10's talk from DerbyCon called PowerShell Secrets and Tactics. Actually a really good talk besides just this one executable. And he goes ahead and introduces an executable he wrote called nps.exe, not PowerShell. And basically what he does is to wrapper, instead of us calling PowerShell.exe, which then calls the DLL, we call his program, which calls the DLL. And then we feed it which command we want to go ahead and pipe to it. So in his demonstration, he shows that at no point does NPS call PowerShell.exe. So we've just bypassed that policy. One thing that I didn't have time that I had to cut was AMSI. AMSI is something also being introduced in PowerShell 5. And basically it allows AV vendors to scan PowerShell code before it's run. So PowerShell code is unobfuscated. It, in theory, would be passed up to AMSI. AMSI sends it to AVG, AV check, and then it goes ahead and runs after that point. The issue with AMSI is that no AV vendors are supporting it right now. Oh, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. A limited number of AV vendors are supporting it. Those are Windows Defender, that is AVG, and that's it. So that's not semantic, not from the McAfee's of the world. You have a free tool and you have Windows doing it for you. If you were to come across an environment though that was using it, that actually had a AV vendor that was scanning it, there's ways to get around it already as well. There's a talk from Black Hat from a gentleman named McCall. Once again, it's in the slide, which I'll put up there. And then there's also Matt Graber went ahead and put like a one-liner that will go ahead and bypass AMSI. So things we can get around, but you're still better off than where you were with PowerShell 2. So we've talked about logging. We've talked about ways to make it harder to execute commands in PowerShell. One thing we haven't touched is how can we work around, how can we make recon harder? And that's not going to work because PowerShell is case insensitive. But one thing you can do is there's a script out there called NetSys. So basically, some history, quick history is that PowerView is based on NetView, which I believe ties into NetSession. But NetView is a script that came out in Windows in 2012 by Muvix, and it goes ahead and it uses NetSession enumeration, a library, NetSession library, and NetSTAWK, I believe, to go ahead and enumerate systems. PowerView pretty much came to be because Will was in an environment where he couldn't use net commands in Windows. So basically, what happens is that by default, or by implementation, or by design, NetSession enum allows for regular users, has permissions for regular users, and also for administrator users. So that's where the value for, as an attacker point of view, comes to be, is that because the way Windows has the .NET library created, I, as a regular user, am able to use the NetSession library to start querying every single machine in the environment and get some data back. Now, if I have admin rights in the environment, I'll get a bit more data. But for user hunting, regular user permissions just fine. So what this gentleman did, Mr. Grady did, was you can go ahead and modify the restrictions. You can go ahead and create security restrictions on NetSession by modifying the registry yourself. Or you can go ahead and run NetSys, which is a PowerShell script in your environment, and do it there for you. So you go ahead and you run NetSys on your domain controllers, on your file servers, on anything that's hosting services. And the next time, I can't show you a demo here, unfortunately, but basically what's going to happen is with NetSys enabled, if I was to go back and rerun that invoke user hunter, I'm not going to be able to find the DADM account as my regular user account on my domain. And the reason for that is, once I query the domain controller, the DC is not going to give me any data back. So, good way to go ahead and stop the user hunter functionality. Now, how can we go ahead and bypass everything we just talked about? And all you have to do is you start PowerShell 2. So when I was installing Windows 2012 on my lab, I was given the option to install PowerShell 5, but also to install PowerShell 2 as well. There's no need to install PowerShell 2. If you have, if I was to go ahead and run PowerShell 2 in plain language mode, app blocker functionality, I'm pretty sure the logging stuff too doesn't work anymore. You just work around it. So if you're going to go ahead and upgrade your systems to PowerShell 5, you want to ensure that 2 doesn't exist anymore in your system. And an easy way to test is just to go ahead and type PowerShell.exe-version2, and then that should be it. That should fail. If that fails, there's a way to get around everything you just did. So a partial list of things I got the information from. I tried to credit everything in the footers, but basically Googling Microsoft, Sean Metcalf, really knowledgeable guy on AD. He's like one of like 180 people that have this certain certificate, so he knows his stuff. He talks a lot at DEF CON and Black Hat and DerbyCon. Ben 10, good guy, good class, great talks. Will Schroeder, Matt Graver, and then some repeats, but more of a thorough list. Some Twitter handles too. If you happen to have a chance to go to DerbyCon, Carlos Perez seems to give a class every year on PowerShell. Really good stuff. Yeah, I did that 2 years ago. Jared Height does PS Attack. Sean Metcalf, once again, his blogs are kick-ass. I mean, he goes into a lot of detail on his blogs. Jared Atkinson runs a project called Power Forensics. So we've only talked attack side, but Power Forensics is for forensic use. Other two names I've already mentioned. And then Lee Holmes, Security of PowerShell for Microsoft. You have Jessica Payne, who Incident Response for Microsoft. She has a really good presentation from a conference out of New Zealand. And then one that comes to mind is Subchief. If you do any red team kind of stuff, he's been going crazy about MS Build and ways to go ahead and bypass USC by using MS Build. So that, and then just a quick thanks to Sunny, who's working here, for helping me with my slides, Darren, Jared, and Katie. And last but not least, any questions for me? Sir.
Going back to what you were, and I don't want to expand too far beyond the scope of the topic, but for the transcription and the script logging, outside things like ArcSight and whatever, because now you've got all these logs, now you got to know how to aggregate them and go through them intelligently.
Yeah.
What built-in abilities does Windows have to help flag on, okay, I want to specifically watch for these commands, in transcription logs or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? The other part of the incident response, you've got the monitoring, you've got the logging, now you've got to parse them, that part of it.
I don't know if anything, so the question is there anything built into Windows that will go ahead and alert on
even basic stuff?
Script logs? Not that I know of.
They never have.
Yeah. I think your stuff making that content yourself. But I know ArcSight a little bit. I mean, maybe you can go ahead and create filters.
I know ArcSight has built-in PowerShell logging capabilities.
Yeah.
To what point that is turnkey and custom, I don't know, but I wanted to see if there was anything built in.
Nothing built in that I know of.
Right.
Anyone else? Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll get you next, right? Yes. You have to get version 5. The question is, how do I get MSI? AMSI is only on 5. Yeah, just Google me. Google, I have a GitHub page that says get add history. I'll put it there. You're welcome. Anyone else? Sir. You don't have the document.
What's up? Shit, yeah.